Okay, good morning. We're back with the book of Esther. So, Esther, chapter 1, the king's banquet. This happened in the days of Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. At that time, he ruled his empire from his throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his princesses and officials. He invited all the military officers of Media and Persia, as well as the noblemen and provincial officials. The celebration lasted 6 months in a tremendous display of opulent wealth and glory of his empire. When it was all over, I'm like shaking the camera here. When it was all over, the king gave a special banquet for all the palace servants and officials, from the greatest to the least. It lasted for 7 days and was held at Susa at the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was decorated with beautifully woven white and blue hangings, fastened by purple ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on the mosaic pavement of porphyry. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Marble and mother of pearl and other costly stones. Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine, just as the king had commanded. The only restriction on the drinking was that no one should be compelled to take more than he wanted, but those who wished could have as much as they pleased, for the king had instructed his staff to let everyone decide this matter for himself. Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women of the palace at the same time. Queen Vashti deposed. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was half drunk with wine, he told Muman, Besla, Harbonia, Bigtha, Begatha, Zertha, and Sarkis, the 7 eunuchs, who invited him, to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted all the men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. But when they conveyed the king's orders to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. He immediately consulted with his advisors, who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. The names of these men were Kirshna, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Muris, Marcina, and Mamakan, 7 high officials of Persia and Media. They were his oldest associates and held the highest positions in the empire. What must be done to Queen Vashti? The king demanded. What penalty does the law provide for the queen who refused to obey the king's orders, properly sent through his eunuchs? Monacan answered the king and his princes. Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but every official and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti had refused to appear before the king. Before that day is out, the wife of every one of us, your officials, excuse me while I turn the page, your officials throughout the empire will hear what the queen had did and will start talking to their husbands the same way. There will be no end to the contempt and anger throughout your realm. So if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of Persians and Medians that cannot be revoked. It should order that the Queen Vashti be forever banished from your presence, and that you chose another queen more worthy than she. When this decree is published throughout your vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. The king and his princes thought this made good sense, so he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province with its own script and language, and proclaimed that every man should be the ruler of his home. Esther, chapter 2. Esther becomes queen. But after Xerxes' anger had cooled, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his descendants suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at Susa. Haggai, the eunuch in charge, will see that they all give beautiful treatments. After that, the young woman who pleases you most will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice is very pleasing to the king, so he put the plan into effect immediately. Now at the fortress of Susa there was a certain Jew named Mordecai, son of Jar. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar, along with King Joachim of Judea and many others. This man had a beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hardasha, who was also called Esther. When his father and mother had died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai's care. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids, especially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background, for Mordecai had told her not to. Every day Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to ask about Esther and to find out what was happening to her. Before each woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatment, 6 months with oil myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. When the time came for her to go to the king, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to enhance her beauty. That evening she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Sashgaz, another of the king's eunuchs. She would live there for the rest of her life, and never going to the king again unless he especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. When Esther was taken to the king Xerxes at the royal palace in the early winter of the 7th year of his reign, the king loved her more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. To celebrate the occasion, he gave the banquet in Esther's honor for all his princes and servants, giving glorious gifts to everyone and declaring a public festival for the provinces. Even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her nationality and family background a secret. She was still following Mordecai's orders just as she did when she was living in his home. Mordecai's loyalty to the king. One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the palace, 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him, but Mordecai heard about the plot and passed the information on to Queen Esther. Then she told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the 2 men were hanged on the gallows. This was all duly recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reigns. Okay, and later I'll be back with chapter 3.